November 25th, the servant of God, Paul Pius Perazzo. Confessor, Third Order. Perazzo was not a hermit nor a friar, but an everyday train dispatcher. Proof again that no station in life is a hindrance to holiness. Moreover, he did not live several hundred years ago, but he belongs to our own times, having died as recently as 1911. And he is already far along the way to be declared blessed. Turin, the city that has gained fame because of the saintly tertiary priests it produced, Don Bosco, Joseph Cotolengo, and Joseph Cafasso, is also associated with the name of Paul Pius Perazzo. He was born on July 5th, 1846, at Nizza, Monferrato, and his excellent parents raised their boy to be one of God's little soldiers. He regarded everything with an outstanding awareness of God's providence. One day, as a little boy, he was fanning the coals in the open fireplace and stumbled right into the coals. His clothes caught fire, and he got some very bad burns. But he never uttered a whimper nor shed a tear. Ruefully regarding his crippled thumb, he said merely, "Mama, I guess I shall never be able to write again. That thumb will not behave anymore." He once lost first place in class, and the professor felt called upon to sympathize with him. "Never mind, Paul, you will beat him again next time." "Oh, Professor," said Paul with genuine astonishment in his tone, "I have never thought of studying to beat others, only for the fun of it, and because that is what I am here for." But he devoted himself to studies in such a way that it began taking a toll on his health. So his priestly uncle, who supervised his studies, advised that he get a job before it was too late. And that is how Paul got to be a railroader. He found it difficult to give up formal application to study and continued privately to keep himself informed on certain subjects that would be serviceable to him in railroad work. He worked for 5 years without a salary, sometimes for 10, 12, or more hours a day. He got to be a small-town freight clerk then, and in 1867 he was promoted to Turin itself. Meanwhile, a nice young lady fell in love with the dignified and yet charming young railroad clerk. Her mother consulted Mother Perazzo, since it was really a desirable match, for the girl was a good girl and well-to-do. Paul's mother put the case before him. "Just as you say, Mother," was the reply, but his mother had no intention of deciding the matter for him. "It is for you to say, not for me," she told him. "Very well then, Mother," he replied. "If I am to make the choice, shall we say the affair is off once and for all?" And that is how it happened that Paul lived and died a bachelor. But he took another bride, and that was the Church. He became more and more interested and posted in the doctrines of the Church, the better to meet the anti-Catholic and anti-religious attacks that were so bitter at the time, especially among men of his class. He joined the Third Order of St. Francis on St. Joseph's Day in 1875 and became a real apostle of the truth by word and example. That gained for him the respect of his associates, but it also brought upon him the hardest trial an ambitious young man can meet. Young Perazzo was making good when the crudest and most unjust discrimination was launched against him on account of his religious convictions and his refusal to drop the practice of his religion. It showed itself first in little annoyances. His pay was not raised, while that of others around him, who owed everything to him, rose constantly. In 1886, after 25 years of service, he was indeed made assistant freight agent at Porta Nuova in Turin, and 2 years later, chief agent. But then unreasonable duties had also been added to his work, and every pretext was found to rob him of his holidays. When the time came that he was eligible for promotion, he was totally ignored, and younger men got the coveted positions. He remained freight agent at Porta Nuova for 20 years without a promotion or an increase in salary. An influential friend made an appeal in his behalf, only to be repulsed with the contemptuous remark that the government has no money for prayer patterers like Perazzo, or to give favors to priests and monks. In Italy, as in other European countries, it must be remembered that the railroads are operated by the government. In 1911, he would have completed 50 years of service and been eligible for a pension, but instead they found reason to dismiss him with 2 days' notice in the year 1908. He died November 22nd, 1911, in a year that he should have been pensioned, and went to his true home where services like his receive a just reward. People began speaking of him and honoring him as a saint, and his cause of beatification is now pending in Rome. Adversities are stepping stones to sanctity. When we reflect on the heroic manner in which Paul Perazzo bore the annoyances and injustices inflicted on him in his work, we are not surprised that his process for beatification was set on foot immediately after his death. God had tried his servant and found him faithful. Gold and silver are tried in the fire, but acceptable men in the furnace of humiliation. Ecclesiastes 2:5. And St. James says, "Blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been proved, he shall receive the crown of life." Can you expect to receive a crown if you are not willing to bear a trial in patience? The trials of Paul Perazzo extended over nearly half a century. A less saintly man would soon have given up the faith, or at least have ceased to love and practice it, or he would have grown embittered with everything and everybody. Not so Paul Perazzo. He stuck to his job, was faithful to his religious practices, and sociable with his fellow workers. He used these trials as stepping stones to sanctity, and though the road was long and weary at times, he was rewarded in the end when the God of sanctity welcomed him to the land of eternal rest. If in our trials and sufferings we imitate the conduct of Paul Perazzo, we too shall attain to a degree of sanctity that will be our passport to heavenly bliss. The extent of our love of God is manifested by the manner in which we bear the trials he sends us. Brave as death itself is love. That has been demonstrated by the holy martyrs, but those who have shed their blood for the faith are not the only martyrs. Fidelity to duty can be a slow martyrdom requiring sacrifice and sufferings that are equal to bodily martyrdom, and sometimes demanding greater fortitude because of the length of time involved. Here again we can look up to the servant of God, Paul Perazzo, as a shining example of this 20th century. Love of God alone could have induced him to hold fast to the faith when he found himself persecuted because of his religious convictions and afflicted with trials that were indeed a test of heroic sanctity. But he persevered, and as St. Matthew tells us, "He who shall persevere to the end shall be saved." Matthew 24:13. Profit by the trials of life so that you will gain the strength and courage of Paul Perazzo, and they will become stepping stones from earth to heaven. Look with mercy, we beseech thee, O Lord, upon our homage, that the gift we offer may be accepted by thee and be the support of our frailty. Through Christ our Lord. Amen.